Today, I want to answer a question I hear quite a lot. Diatonic thinking versus intervallic thinking. Two different approaches, each with its own unique advantages. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Frank. I run the Music Interval Theory Academy, and I have been composing with the intervals for around 20 years now. I've helped more than 350 composers use interval magic in their music, so they gain a competitive edge in the market and also over those who rely only on diatonic theory. Now that the proof is out of the way, let me get to a quick note. Interval magic isn't meant to replace what you already know or what works for you. Instead, it's a great way to explore new musical ideas so your music sounds unique, more original, and still true to your own voice. Even though I will show you the differences between the two perspectives, I'm not saying one is better than the other, because in the end, it comes down to your personal taste and what you enjoy hearing. So you decide how much of each system you want in the music you create. Think of it as a continuum, not as a one or the other thing. Diatonic means related to a scale. Okay, so everything here is about scales and choosing a key. And that is usually the first step before you write any note. On the intervallic side, we do not follow a fixed scale as a grid. Instead, we work with the distance in chromatic steps. That's why you are seeing a 10 right here. And when we stick to pure distances, we aren't committing to any scale or tonal center just yet. On the diatonic side, we work with chords and chord labels, such as C major 7th or the G dominant 7th. On the intervallic side, we focus only on interval relationships. And those can fit valid chord structures, but they don't have to. So each of those vertical structures listed here has its own distinctive sound that feels unique and evokes a different emotion. Once we have some chords, they usually follow functional harmony on the diatonic side. And this includes progressions like the subdominant moving to the dominant and then to the tonic. And you have heard these movements a million times, in fact, and they work. On the intervallic side, we connect those structures based on the story we want to tell to our audience. So this quickly leads to some follow-up questions, like, are you a good storyteller at all? And is the story you want to tell compelling enough so that your audience will listen? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that just putting things together randomly is not what I'm talking about. You need to make decisions, in fact all the time, such as which intervals connect well with other musical places. That is exactly what we cover in the composition course. Since we use a scale as the foundation in the diatonic system, we already pre-select the tones that are available to us. And there are ways to define exceptions, like alterations and borrowed chords and those things. But this usually adds more complexity and brings in additional rules even. Now, on the intervallic side, any note can work if the next interval or the next note you choose feels like it belongs to the story. And again, that is exactly what we cover in the interval magic materials. The diatonic system focuses a lot on vertical stability and on stacking notes on top on each other. Intervals work both ways, vertically and horizontally, and we often focus more on the horizontal flow and let the vertical relationship between the lines come second. Our ears are trained to listen more to melodies, so we pay more attention to lines generally. And that's why voice leading matters, by the way. Progressions often sound familiar because the patterns repeat. In songwriting, that can be an advantage because we want to give the audience what they are used to hearing. But if you want to write more original music, especially in the media industry, the composer often is expected to do something different. So letting those progressions emerge from interval motion is a wonderful way to create more original and unique sounds that don't follow the familiar patterns everyone has heard so often. This can lead to a frustration that I experienced a few years ago. Most of the music I wrote sounded very predictable and even, boring to me. And that is why I turned to composing with the intervals in the first place. Thinking in intervals encourages originality and takes you to unexpected musical places, while keeping the story easy to follow for your audience. Conventional music theory usually starts with rules because it is a system that follows rules. And if you want to play within that system, you have to know the rules. I understand. However, as artists, we often want to express ourselves in our unique way, and maybe it's exactly those rules that hold us back from reaching our full potential as a composer. And you will experience this in your own unique way, but let me quickly tell you how it unfolded for me. So very often, I heard compositions from, let's say, film scores or even classical works that I simply didn't understand. I had no idea how the composer reached the musical end result or how I could ever come close to composing something similar. And it felt like a closed door, and I didn't even have a key with me, so I couldn't get through, right? And then you might see someone pointing you to an open window that moves around that door so you can get inside. And that's exactly how it felt to me back then. It was so frustrating to keep standing in front of the door, hoping it would magically open. Well, it never did, and it never does. On the diatonic side, you might ask, which chord comes next and which chord is allowed to move into? On the intervallic side, you still ask questions, but they shift. And you may wonder which movements and which intervals you want to pick to create a sense of belonging to the story and to the sonic universe you describe. And that changes how you compose. Now, I want to go a bit deeper into how harmony can be organized on both sides. On the diatonic side, we talk about scale degrees and scale step theory. On the intervallic side, we often work with interval matrices and interval formulas that connect to each other. And these can include valid chord structures, but that's not our starting point. Another big difference is that the diatonic system uses keys and you modulate if you want to change the key. On the intervallic side, we simply write without any key because all the tones are available, right? And we use accidentals where we need them. So that works wonderfully in film music and video games because the music often follows the story closely and the composer needs to change emotions and colors very quickly. So we think in small temporary tonal centers based on the harmonic series. And this gives us control over stability and even how much we want to go against it. One advantage of not writing in a specific key is that you can take the shape of your melody and apply it to a different starting note. And this lets you create form and structure for the listener without being tied to a particular scale or key. The diatonic approach, on the other hand, suggests scale-based melodies, and that style often resonates most with our audience. In fact, melodies that follow a scale are exactly what our ears expect in most cases, especially in songwriting and strong melodic motifs. As a short conclusion, diatonic thinking can feel analytical and sometimes rule-heavy. In fact, I know many composers who have spent most of their time trying to get out of the diatonic system while still sounding true to themselves. Now, the intervallic approach begins with the idea that everything is allowed. So in a way, we start from the outside and then build the set of tools and techniques that help us define our unique voice. Especially those who have spent a lot of time writing in the diatonic system can get trapped in habits very quickly. So they start writing the same song or the same composition over and over again. And if that is happening to you, intervallic thinking encourages you to break those diatonic patterns and habits and get out of them. The diatonic system is great for understanding traditional harmony and for copying those ideas in your own music. It is basically what defines our Western musical culture. And as a composer, you want to speak this musical language fluently. But you also don't want to repeat the same stories that have been told so many times by the greats. And I want to point you to the best next step you can take right now. I created a quick quiz that takes about 4 minutes. And you simply answer a bunch of questions, and based on your answers, the quiz shows where you are in your compositional journey and whether you should explore interval magic. I share the link in the description below so you can check it out. Many thanks. Have a great day. Bye.